Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It, the podcast to help you fix your marriage. I'm Shai Lewis. I'm here with Nina Rosner. Our mission is to help you, Christian married man or woman, navigate conflict and build connection so you can have a thriving marriage. All right, so today we are talking about the word strong and also the word resilient and how sometimes that can be a little cringy if you're, I don't know, carrying a lot. Let's just say that. So here at Greater Impact, we actually have a course that we have named Strength and Dignity, and that's based on the Proverbs 31 verse that everyone, if you've been around Christendom for a little while, has probably heard or read. And so it's interesting because scripture tells us we're to be strong and commends being strong and how we are to get our strength from the Lord. And then, we hear in culture how being resilient is just such a great character strength. And so we talk about that and how, when you've faced a lot of adversity and things come your way that, normally would take you out, how, resilience is the benefit of that. But there's a but. What happens when you have been strong and you have been resilient and you have carried the thing and done the thing for so long that those words aren't compliments anymore? They're, almost like, now you can have it, right? So we want to talk about that today and what to say in those situations and maybe what God is saying to you in those situations. So welcome, Nina. I am excited to talk about this with you today.
Well, I'm looking at this topic going, yeah, who likes to be strong? Nobody in the moment, right? Especially if we're thinking about, oh, I need to be strong here. That's tough. And if you're going through a lot of conflict and difficulty, that's when you're relying on the strength of the Lord to get you through that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it is, like you said, the strength of the Lord. And I think that's key for the topic today, because I think there is a difference between when we're being strong in our own, strength, for lack of a better word, versus really depending on his strength in those tough moments. So, okay. So what we want you to walk away today with is the what to say when you're kind of in that in between where it's, God, I just really could give this up. Like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And the drawing on the strength of the Lord. If you don't do this well, you could end up becoming maybe a little resentful over whatever cross you're carrying in that moment. Okay, so I was watching a video, um, and I don't know. Most people have heard of Dr. Ramani at this point. She's really the expert on narcissism and how those relationships work. And she was talking about the people that deal with narcissists and how they're often called resilient. And she said it becomes almost like to a fault they become resilient because they've had to deal with so much and carry so much for so long, to where it can start to affect their mental health and their physical health and become a detriment to them in a way. And I guess from our perspective, that's another way of just saying you're being a doormat and letting someone just kind of walk all over you. But this stuff really does happen where people get sick because they have no boundaries, or they, don't know their own limitations, or they just bear the brunt of the difficult relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess what I'd like to talk about today is, how do you know, when that's happening? And how do you not become resentful when you're carrying so much and being so strong and doing all the things and everyone's cheering for you and saying you're so strong and you're so resilient, and you're like being depleted
Mhm.
on some level. And so I don't know, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so there's a ton of stuff in that. Yeah, I keep thinking of I've been talking to a lot of people because we're looking at doing another marriage intensive, and there's a lot of pain out there, right?
Mhm,
And I spoke to somebody recently who said, I don't love my spouse anymore. Like, I don't want to fix this. I don't care about them at all. I said, okay, given what you've been through, that makes sense. That's totally understandable.
mhm,
And then you're in this situation where, what are you going to do? Are you going to divorce? Well, I don't really have grounds to divorce. It's like, okay, so what are you going to do? And they're like, well, I think I just, we'll just live separately. And I said, what's that going to teach your kids? You
mhm,
know? And we ended up in this discussion. They're miserable, right? Understandably so. They've been lonely for a long time.
mhm,
And I said, even if you do end up getting divorced, let's say you file, even though you don't have grounds, you go do that. You're going to carry the you are that facilitated an environment where disrespect and loneliness was happening.
mhm,
And you're going to end up in the same spot. That's what people do. And, second marriages end at an even faster rate and a higher rate than first marriages. Like it's in the 60 some percent
mhm,
that happens. And third, same thing, over 70%, right? And it's
mhm,
a shorter amount of time. Well, why is that? And he said, well, what is it that, I'm supposed to be doing here? I said, so you look at, somebody treating you with disrespect, you have an opportunity in that moment to change how you are dealing with this. What have you done in the past? And this person tells me, well, I've ignored the disrespect. I've just not paid attention to it so that it might go away or something. I said, okay, so what's really happening is you've condoned it and then
mhm,
it grows. And so what if instead of that, you looked at the person that, supposed to love you and who's just said something condescending and rude, you look at them and you say, hey, it's not like you to speak to me like that. What's going on? Are you all right? And the response I got was, well, but it is like them to do that. I said, yeah, but they're a believer. That's not who they are.
mhm,
So you call them up
mhm,
to a higher level of being. You speak to the Jesus within them, that is in there somewhere. And by addressing it and calling them to a higher level of being without complaint, without saying you always, you never, all those unhealthy communication patterns that everybody uses that don't work, then you're creating an atmosphere where they can choose to treat you better. And if they don't, then you can say, hey, I love you. I'll talk to you about this when you can be respectful. And you leave the room. Well, they're just going to follow me out. Oh, they might. And then you can get in your car and you can drive away. And you do that enough, they will learn that that doesn't work with you anymore. And they
mhm,
will change their behavior if they want to have a conversation with you. Like that's how that works. We teach people how to treat us. So resilience, yeah, so many people think being resilient means, okay, I can be the longest suffering person in the universe because it says love is long suffering, right?
mhm,
Yeah, well, are you suffering the right thing? Are you suffering challenging your comfort zone in speaking up for yourself in a respectful, God honoring way? Or are you long suffering something that shouldn't be happening in the relationship? Are you long suffering sin? That's really what it comes down to. So I would rather long suffer my terror around speaking up, right?
yeah,
Than not say anything and then be miserable. That's worthless, pointless suffering. And
mm,
how you say something matters because you have to honor that person and the relationship and yourself when you say it.
mhm, mhm. Okay, so you mentioned they may not, and that's the part where, like, your person may not respond or may not do the right thing or may not change their behavior.
Mhm.
So you still have your whatever's left in that situation, which could mean more long suffering. And I know we talk about like how to control the thing in our yard, like, and that's what I want to focus on because sometimes their behavior won't change. And so it's up to you at
Mhm.
this point to kind of really know what to manage and how
Mhm.
to relieve yourself so that you don't have to suffer long and
Mhm.
endure more than you should. Because, at some point it does affect you.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering what are some things, like a wife could do if, she's asked for help a million times and, she's not getting the response that she should be getting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
so
so
she,
funny.
yeah, I mean,
Not
this,
funny, but like that happens, right? And
Mhm.
it's funny that I've had two conversations today about this exact thing.
Oh, great.
Yeah, maybe. So I mean, for real. The first thing that comes to mind is one of the conversations where it was like, I asked for help. I had to work part-time. It was in the evenings. It was 3 nights a week. We had a discussion about me being gone, and he agreed to make dinner.
Mhm,
It's like, okay. So those 3 nights a week, he's making dinner. And that worked for about 3 weeks. And then she came home and there was no dinner.
mhm,
And she said, so it didn't work to ask him for help because I'd asked her, have you ever done that? And she said, yeah, here's this example. And it doesn't work. It's like, well, hold on. you, you know, what conversation ensued? What happened when you got home and there was no dinner? Well, I just took care of myself. I was like, okay, did you have a conversation about it? Well, yeah, I said, well, I thought we agreed to this thing and you didn't do this thing. I said, okay.
mhm,
Um, yeah, that makes sense. And if you were talking to a girl, that'd probably work out okay. But the man has to have a good reason to do anything or to continue doing something if he doesn't see value in it. And maybe it wasn't worth his energy. Why would that be? I don't know. Maybe there wasn't any appreciation for the meals that he cooked, or worse, maybe there was criticism for what he did
oh,
do,
mm,
right?
mm,
And I'm kind of morphing these two conversations into one thing, but you know, you deflate somebody's enthusiasm and motivation for doing something if you don't acknowledge it, or better yet, affirm it, praise them, appreciate it, right? Like
mhm,
we just got this dog, this puppy, and then I've got a 16-month-old and a golden retriever, so they're just toddlers and children until they're 3 years old. It's a mess. And like 2 days ago and yesterday, my husband made dinner because like I found out I didn't brush my teeth yesterday until about 8 o'clock yesterday last night.
oh God.
I know, it's so bad. And I'm back in the newborn phase,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's just
Uh-huh,
ridiculous. I
mm,
just discovered 2 hours ago that I haven't had anything but coffee today. That's a problem. So, but
mm,
what's cool is he came in and he's like, okay, so I'm just gonna make dinner. And he could have made me a peanut butter jelly sandwich and I would have appreciated it. Like it would not have mattered. And I think that's the level of gratitude we need. Now he did way
uh,
better.
uh-huh,
He managed some incredible sauce with something in the fridge and, pasta. It was gorgeous. And he's a great cook anyway. Yeah. But if he'd have said, hey, we've got peanut butter and jelly, that's what I'm doing, I would have said, thank you so much. Because I've been eating, protein bars because that's all there that I have time to deal with. I'm really neurotic about housebreaking. I don't allow any accidents. So that means I'm watching this dog constantly. You can't watch a dog and cook lunch. Like
oh,
that's not possible. So, when you're talking about, when they don't do what you have to ride that wave, and it's a long one. And there's
yeah,
pieces of it, like the positive reinforcements, the lack of criticism. Then on top of that, let's say you've been doing that and he's just so selfish and immature that he's just like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. It's like, okay, so how do you want to manage having dinner? Like, let's renegotiate this contract that we set up that doesn't work for you. Okay, so honey, it doesn't work for you to make dinner 3 nights a week. how do you want to handle this moving forward? Like, what do you want to do? Because
Mhm.
I'm going to walk in at 7:30 starving,
Mhm.
and you're going to come home at 5 and not have anything to eat either. So how do you want to negotiate this? What should we do? And then you let them solve the problem. This is one of the biggest mistakes women make in marriage is they don't bring a problem to their husband and let him solve it. And that means letting him solve it his way.
Oh,
So if he
that
wants to order pizza every night, let him do that. And then he gets tired of pizza and he'll try something else. Like, stop being so controlling. Let him figure it out.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think to your point, gratitude is a thing we forget when we're exhausted and we're resentful, is that it may be that we're not getting the thing we want the way we want it, but we're
Mhm.
getting something, and that
Mhm.
we need to acknowledge the thing that we are getting. So there may be a little adjustment that needs to happen with our
Mhm.
expectations.
Oh, always, right?
Yeah,
Because in that situation, he's worked a hard day too, right?
yeah.
10 hours at the office or whatever it was, went in at 7, comes home at 5 or, worse, and then, has to start second shift. Like, there's not a lot of young married men that know to do that or to be helpful in that space until the wife has a baby and literally cannot function. Yeah, especially if you don't have family around or any of that kind of stuff. And so men in our culture pitch in because there's not a lot of family around most of the time, at least often comparatively to other cultures. So there's a high calling on men and their energy that wasn't there for them, decades ago. It was enough for them to go to work, but
Right.
families were different back then. We were closer neighborhood wise. We didn't live in these micro mansions. You could run across the street and get a cup of sugar in 17 seconds, and now it's like this big ordeal. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's so true. And that's one of the things I think that we aren't doing or we can do more is ask for help, like
mhm.
create a village. Because if you're like me, you're tempted to just do it on your own and do it by yourself because you think you can, and culture said you can, and it's just
Yeah.
a lie. And then you're like angry because you can't.
Yes. Yes. So can I talk about that for a second?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, this came up today in another conversation, well, two other conversations. This is the big lie. And it's been sold to Western women all over the world that you can do it all, you can have it all. And
Hmm.
that's simply not true. The CEO of Pepsi Cola years ago, Irma, whatever her name is, I can't remember, but she was saying that, you cannot be the CEO of a big corporation and raise a 10-year-old well. You need to pull in all of your family members and you're still going to lose out because you're not there. It's really hard and the culture's pressed us to that. And
Hmm.
there's this communication thing that occurs that nobody talks about. I had this awareness this morning when I was conversing about it with a friend of mine, and so there's this lane of femininity in our
Mm.
communication that's really attractive to the man we married specifically.
Hmm.
The way of a man with a woman is mysterious, right?
Hmm.
So he's drawn to the feminine nature, and it's a very narrow lane, and it's the lane where we're asking him for advice. We're ask not because we're less than, but because we're creating connection and partnership. That's one of the things that feminine women do is create connection and partnership.
Hmm.
Now, the feminazis and the people who want to burn your bra will say, well, that's demeaning. It's like, no, I'm wired by God to be able to facilitate that better than he is, of course. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to intentionally say, hey, what do you think about XYZ? So that's a space. And we can steer off of that pretty easily with sexual manipulation. So we can become these sexual creatures and use power in that space, which is
Hmm.
pretty easy to manipulate men, I suppose, right? I mean, we don't want to do that, but that is a thing. That's another lane that's not holy. Then there's this other lane that we all learn the language of corporate America, and we're very direct. And yeah, and we're almost motherly in some other lane over here with
Hmm.
kid. Yeah, that's not feminine. Like none of that. fits with the feminine energy that really is influential in a marriage. Ah,
Yeah.
and yeah. Hmm.
And that's really hard to turn on and off when you're doing both of those at the same time. Like you said, the lady said you can't raise a 10-year-old and then be CEO of PepsiCo at the same time and do both well. It's like because those are different skill sets. Those are
Hmm.
completely different. And I think women find it hard who are in that situation to find that lane because 8 hours a day you're in a different lane. So
Yep.
how do you come home and get in there?
Yeah,
It's
it is hard.
mm,
It's that whole shifting of your audience, being aware of your audience at any given moment. If you're raising kids, you're not going to talk to the 3-year-old the same way you talk to the 17-year-old.
mhm,
But we get lazy. I did, right? And that was one of the problems that whacked me in the face. Is like, oh, Nina, you're treating your husband like one of your kids. Like, stop that. So
mhm.
demeaning to men. And then they don't they don't want to participate in the relationship because and they don't want to help because and this is the thing that men are struggling with in our culture big time. We don't need them.
Mm. Oof.
Yeah, because we can do it all, be it all, even moderately poorly and excellently in other spaces.
Oh gosh.
I
That
know.
is like gut wrenching because we don't really know that's the message we're sending
Yep.
because, we believe the lie.
Hmm.
And then we wake up one day and it's like everything's broken that we care about and we don't
Hmm.
understand what happened. And these are just subtleties, I think, that
Yes.
the enemy like inserts into our families that gosh, take years sometimes to undo. So, yeah.
I got frustrated with my oldest son. He's 28 now. He was 15 at the time. I was heavily laden. He didn't open the door for me, and I got mad at him. And I said, "So what was that about? Like, you could see that I was struggling." And he said, "Well, if I did that, it communicates. I don't think you can handle it. If you want something, you need to ask." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fair. Thanks for letting me know what's in your head." And I said,
Mhm.
as a man walking around a woman, I would suggest you open the door for anybody who's heavily laden. He said, "Well, I've done that, and I've had women tell me off." I said, "Well, I'm
Mm.
not going to be one of them. I appreciate your help 100% of the time. And I'm sorry for anybody who's ever treated you that way. That's wrong." He goes, "It wasn't because they were girls. It was just because they had their arms full. It wouldn't have mattered if they were a dude or anybody. I would have held the door. But yeah, I've been told off." So we had, some understanding around that. But to offer help communicates, "I don't think you can handle this if you're a dude." And so as a woman, I'm going to ask for help. And if I'm not getting a response in that space, I want to examine what is it that I've been doing. Maybe it was 10 years ago that I was
Mhm.
able to ask for help and got it. And
Mhm.
then how did I handle that? Did I judge it? Did I criticize it? Was it not good enough? Was I not appreciative? Um, and maybe you were all those things and he just has an issue. And then it's like, okay, so start by asking for advice about stuff so you can build partnership and speak to the masculinity in him with your femininity. Be gentle, be kind, and have boundaries. Because to your point, a lot of the reason women think that they need to be strong is because they don't have any boundaries and they say yes to everything. And we need to not do that anymore. Stop it.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I think saying no is also a challenge. To
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
point is like, how do you say no in a way that is feminine?
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yes.
Versus,
Yeah. So
yeah,
if femininity is nurturing and caring,
yeah.
then I'm going to say, "I'm so honored that you asked me. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I'll pray about that for a bit and get back to you." That might be feminine. Or, "Thank you so much for asking me. I am honored. And I'm 100% sure that I can't add that to my plate, but I know that Joanne would be amazing at that. So maybe you should ask her."
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just a very acknowledgement of the offer in a beautiful way and being kind and still saying no.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
you know?
Okay. What if you've said yes and now you've been doing the things and you need to undo it. Like
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
realized,
Yes.
oh, I've been doing this wrong.
And that right there is why everybody's hanging on. Like, what do you say when you've done? Because that's been me too. I've done that. I've gone back to people, and it's humbling.
Yeah.
Say, it's not like me. It's not my identity to be a person that doesn't keep my commitments. And at the same time, I need to tell you, I can't do this. I have tried it. I want to help you here, and I just can't do it. I'm overtaxed.
Yeah.
So I am so sorry. I appreciate the trust that you gave me with this, and I need to hand it back to you. And I'm so sorry. I
Mm,
wish that things were different. I wish I could help you here, but I just can't do it anymore.
yeah. Yeah, and that takes a lot of humility getting to that place because I think,
Uh-huh.
we've convinced ourselves we can do it, and then we're really humbled when we find out we can't. And
Oh,
so being
yeah.
able to say it out loud is like, oh, yeah. But
Yep.
and I also think it's about understanding what is necessary and what isn't, in terms of like your life. Like you and Kyle actually did an episode where it was said sometimes when you live below a certain level or you eliminate things in your schedule, that right there eliminates a lot of the conflict in the
Yep.
marriage because your capacity
Yeah.
has now suddenly like increased to where you're not,
Hmm.
stretched so much. So I think also there's that adjustment when you're saying no. You're actually telling yourself no too, is that I
Yes.
really don't need this. So let me be honest about it,
Oh, girl, that's genius right there. Like, that's worth the price of admission. Like, so good. So good.
It takes a minute to get there, because your reality isn't matching up with your, desire, but you got to choose at some point. So I think
Amen.
sometimes the what to say is what to say to yourself. Okay, so I think that is a lot right there to take away what you shared. There's ways around this word strong and this other word resilient that we hear so often, where we can avoid becoming resentment or resentful around it. And the way to do that is really just being grateful, is what I heard. Um, noticing the things that are going well. And then when you're carrying too much, maybe try putting up some boundaries, saying no. And if you've already, taken the wrong road and you need to turn around, then maybe try I can't, and just humbling yourself and getting to a place where you can let go of some expectations. And so a few good tips today. Thank you so much, Nina, for that. So, what will you do with the information you have today? We invite you to check out our website, greaterimpactwives.org. We have a free PDF called Find Your Voice, 5 Steps to Stop Walking on Eggshells. We also have a free space on Facebook you can join. It's Strength and Dignity course, the one we mentioned earlier. And then if you want more, we have coaching products and other goodies for you on our website. And then, of course, we have more episodes on this channel. So thanks for joining today. We'll see you next time.